if you know me, you know that I am obsessed with the mob bosses and if they're done properly. So I personally think that John Turturro as Carmine Falcone was like a match made in heaven. Hey guys, welcome back to Canon Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Today I will be reviewing The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. Now, I was pretty apprehensive going into this. Robert Pattinson just didn't feel like Bruce Wayne to me. I think that Matt Reeves really nailed the look of the Batman heading into this. I was so excited for Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, clearly. Like, nails done, whole thing. I was so excited for Selena Kyle, and she exceeded my expectations. I adore her. So to get into the review, I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. I thought that it was just really well done. This is the first time, and I know a lot of people have been giving me slack for saying this, but this is the first time that it truly just felt like it was centered on Bruce Wayne and it was centered on Batman, and it just felt like you got to know him as a character and what Gotham City ends up doing to Bruce and to Batman. So I feel like the ensemble was like this well-oiled machine. They all worked together perfectly. They worked for Bruce Wayne, they worked for Batman as a character, and it had great character development for him by the end of this film. So I felt like this is the first time that the villains, his rogues gallery, didn't really overpower him. And yeah, it's a 3-hour movie. They had ample opportunity to just steal the spotlight, much like Heath Ledger did for the Joker. And the entire Nolan trilogy really did that because Bale was just not strong enough, in my opinion. The story for the Nolan trilogy was never really focused enough on Bruce Wayne and the detective side of him. And that's the one thing that made Bruce Wayne and made Robert Pattinson shine as Bruce and as Batman because of the detective elements, the film noir elements. You could really see the Matt Reeves kind of watch Chinatown and watch Taxi Driver and watch Seven, heavily influenced by Seven. You could see and feel that even through the cinematography, stunning visuals by Greg Fraser, you could feel that you're in a noir film. And it's also a comic book film. So I think that when these directors fuse genres and do it in a way that is very simple and easy to follow, even though the story had twists, it wasn't like, oh my God, what a twist. They're little twists. And they came at the right moment to keep the pacing throughout these 3 hours. And I think that I could have sat there for another like 4 or 5, to be honest, just because of how detailed it was, just because of how focused it was for the detective aspect. And I absolutely love Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon. I think that this is also the first time, and I know that everyone's like, but Batman Begins and The Dark Knight and Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. So like, I understand all of that, but this feels like they were actually working together. Commissioner Gordon and Batman were working together. This felt like Seven. It felt like Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, to be perfectly honest. It felt like that because the Batman was in with Commissioner Gordon, going to work these cases together with the GCPD. So this felt like it was a first for me to sit here and watch this and actually understand their relationship and their dynamic because it just works so differently than the other iterations of it. So I was just blown away by that. And their chemistry, the two of them together doing the detective work, was really important to move the story along with the Riddler. Now, the Riddler, Paul Dano, my goodness, he has always been a fantastic actor. Always. Flew under the radar, very underrated, but we don't get to see the craziness until the third act. And there is a moment in the third act that left me stunned, left me completely stunned. And it was just the Riddler and Batman alone, the writing, the script, the dialogue that the Riddler had in that specific moment, the emotions coming from Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne through the cowl. It was just an incredible scene in the third act, but they built up to it. The Riddler, although he's crazy, is all about subtlety with the notes that he leaves, with the riddles that he leaves. And I think that that side of it, trying to figure that out with the Batman and Commissioner Gordon, I felt like that really, really worked throughout the entire thing. And you got to see the build of the Riddler. Reeves really built the anticipation of what the Riddler wanted to do in the end. And I think that in those three acts, you kind of get a different side of the Riddler. You get deeper into the Riddler and what he wanted to do. Paul Dano was perfect casting. I really enjoyed watching him. And as I'm going into the Rogues Gallery, I think that the Riddler was the best out of all of them, but it's like very slim percentage above the rest of them because they all had their time to shine, which is really hard in an ensemble. It's really hard with villains specifically, but it's more of an introduction to all of these characters. We are going to show you how they are. We're going to introduce you to the world of Gotham as they know it. And it wasn't like any other origin story. It's very much like we know the story, we know the bones of it all, and they executed it in such a different way to make it feel refreshing. Of course, we all know Falcone, we know Maroni, dropping Maroni in there, we know the Rogues Gallery. So it was just really interesting to see how different they wanted to present these characters. And it was an introduction. It felt like we are going to stay with these characters for a long period of time. So we're going to give you the start of the madness in Gotham. And I really, really love that. Going into Catwoman, my girl, my Selina Kyle, who is presented as bisexual in this film. And I'm just so happy that they did that for her. Zoe Kravitz barely had to do anything. She's one of those actors where she can stand there and I will believe that you are the character. This falls in line with Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne and also Henry Cavill as Superman. You can just stand there. Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, you're Selina Kyle. So she nailed it. She's tough. She has the seductive voice, the charm that she has. She flips in and out. She's very, very tough as nails, and you can see that. She also had the physicality, the physical aspects that make up Catwoman, very light on her feet. And she was moving in a different way as well. You could feel that from her. And I just love her chemistry with Robert Pattinson. It was fantastic. That pairing is like a dream pairing. And Matt Reeves actually understood that the Bat and the Cat work side by side. It's not like it's the Batman and then Catwoman's down here. It's like they are equals in what they're trying to do in order to make Gotham a little less corrupt. So I think that them working together and not having her as much as like the female side character really just made me happy because that's how they're supposed to be with each other. And they nailed the chemistry. They nailed the actual character interactions in that dynamic from the comics. It's the best Bat and Cat that we've ever had. So Selina Kyle, aces, love her. Zoe Kravitz, God bless you. You looked amazing. Then we get into the mob bosses. If you know me, you know that I am obsessed with the mob bosses and if they're done properly. So I personally think that John Turturro as Carmine Falcone was like a match made in heaven. That was a literal dream for me. He was really subtle, reserved, cold, but he also needed to be warm in order to charm the people around him. And even when he delivered his lines, there was always like this underlying thing where he'll be telling you the version of the truth, but he won't expose himself. I couldn't have asked for a better Carmine Falcone. Going to Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, his right hand, Falcone's right hand. What can I say? He was phenomenal. Like just so good, such great character work, the characterization, the prosthetics, everything about it, his mannerisms. When you do those close-ups on Oswald Cobblepot, you see in his eyes that it is Colin Farrell, but he is completely unrecognizable. So the Rogues Gallery, phenomenal work. they work together with Batman so Bruce can kind of piece together who he is, what he needs to do in order to protect his city. And I really love that it was all about rebirth for his first film, because we do see a very broken Bruce Wayne. He's not the playboy as we've seen previously, and that's why it makes it refreshing. The focus is not necessarily on Bruce because he's running away from that side of him. And I think that really worked, because then we got to see Batman for 75% of this film do the detective work. He's very quick on his feet, and we got to see that he throws everything into the Batman but forgets that he's Bruce Wayne. And I really, really love that. I think it was just different. I loved Andy Serkis as Alfred. I would like to see more of him as well. They had a great dynamic. Again, it's very cold, reserved. That's who Bruce is until you break that mold and you get to that emotional side of him. And even though Rob played it very stoic, it was more of like an internal performance. I think that when his emotions did come through, when he was in the cowl in certain situations, that's when it got me. So I feel like this is the best Batman performance. I'm really not sold on Bruce Wayne. He really got me maybe in the second act. I got into it a bit more. I felt closer to Bruce after a certain scene. So I think that when it comes to definitive Batman roles, this is it. This is best thing. It's very well-rounded. Nothing is missing. You don't need the Playboy persona. I think a lot of people were tired of the Playboy persona because he's so much more than that as a character. I know that I'm going to grow with Rob as Bruce Wayne. It's going to come with his character development, and I think he's really going to grow into this role, but I really liked it. I did really enjoy it. So cinematography was great. Car chases were great. The sound design is impeccable. You hear the footsteps. You hear them coming from the shadows. The lighting isn't that dark. I don't know why people are complaining that it's darkly lit. I'm like, it works because it's Batman. I'm like, what? It works because it's Batman. You don't want him in broad daylight. Like, that's not the purpose of that. That's Bruce Wayne territory. You want Batman coming from the shadows because he is the shadows. So it's really, really cool how they did that. The lighting was great. As I said, I felt like the production design was really strong as well, because each director brought a different version of Gotham. I think it was more comic booky that they did that, except for Nolan, because that was just like a regular city. Did not feel like Gotham whatsoever. But in this case, Reeves did it in a different way where it felt very old and it was decaying and it was broken. Things were breaking down. It just felt very old. The Wayne Manor looked like it was beaten down. It looked like it's been there for like centuries. It just felt like old and dark and grimy. And I love that. Again, give me different, give me refreshing, give me your own vision of what Gotham's supposed to look like. And I think that seeing it as this broken down, corrupt city is what it's supposed to be. I thought he did a great job with the production design as well. So every little thing that I just said gives this immersive experience where as Gotham swallows Bruce Wayne whole and swallows Batman whole, Matt Reeves does that to the audience. That goes into also feeling like you're in the cowl at times. There were moments where it was really just behind the eyes and you could look through binoculars. You could see him like spying on everyone, very objective. And I really love that. Again, very different. More the detective side of things. Reminded me of the Telltale games, to be perfectly honest, where you become Batman with Batman. And I think going through that with a different lens is just so important for fans. It's just so important for fans. And it felt like it was very interactive. You had cameras like over the shoulder, like you're sitting on his shoulder looking at everything. You had scenes with the Batmobile, with his motorcycle that just felt like you were there, that you were driving with him. And I think that that is just magic. That's movie magic right there. Certain angles really just stood out to me. Again, Greg Fraser, God bless you. The cinematography is phenomenal, let alone the visual storytelling that elevated this script and really worked with Matt Reeves in the story he was trying to tell. And his direction was incredible. On top of that, Michael Giacchino's score for the Batman is brilliant. It's brilliant. So you have the score accompanied with the sound design to make it feel more menacing that he's coming from the shadows. And his Batman theme is beautiful, but it also feels like it's dark and broody, and you need to sit with it. You need to sit with the Batman score, and you feel like you are Bruce Wayne in that situation. So I think that the score also, as bombastic as it is at times, very loud and just chilling majority of the time, you feel the weight of Gotham City on his shoulders when it gets really loud. But once it gets really soft and intimate with those moments, especially with Catwoman, it just tells you two different stories. And for the score to tell you a story with the visuals, with the actual script, and the direction from Matt Reeves, it is literally a perfect machine working together. I really do think so. It's one of the best Batman movies ever. I don't know if it's going to edge The Dark Knight out for me. I'm going to have to watch The Dark Knight again and watch The Batman again to make my final thoughts on that. But this is just, it's a treat. It really is a treat. Everyone just worked together so well. I do have to say the film does drag a bit. These are nitpicks just for me. The film does drag a bit towards the third act. I feel like whatever happened in that half hour, which I'm not going to say, that half hour could have been tacked on to another film, like a sequel, I think. And to kick off the sequel, I think that they didn't know how to end it. I felt like it had multiple endings in the third act, unfortunately, but the way that they did end it, I loved it. There are definitely some shots taken from Chinatown, and I'm so happy that I rewatched Chinatown for the Suit Up Geeks. We did a versus of Taxi Driver and Chinatown, and there were definitely some notes there that I noticed, especially with the use of mirrors, the binoculars, those lenses. I thought it was really interesting. Minor nitpicks. You do feel it a bit, but I could have sat there with these characters. It's not like it's a massive takeaway. So I did give the Batman 4 out of 5 stars on my letterbox. If you guys enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe. Let me know if you love the Batman. Let me know if Robert Pattinson is your definitive Batman. Let me know. You guys can always follow me over at AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.